The gate slammed shut behind her. Her suitcase hit the wet pavement, and the rain swallowed her scream. If you love powerful revenge stories with shocking twists, make sure you *subscribe, like this video, and comment *rise* below. Because this story only gets darker from here. The security guards didn't look at her. They avoided her eyes, as if she were already erased. Arya Callaway stood barefoot on the stone driveway of the Harrington estate, rain soaking through her thin black dress. 3 hours earlier, she had been sitting beside her husband's lifeless body in a hospital corridor. 3 hours earlier, she was still a wife. Now she was nothing. Behind the towering iron gates stood the Harrington mansion, white marble, golden lights glowing from the windows, untouched by grief. Inside that house, her late husband's family was already deciding her future. Without her, the front doors opened again. Evelyn Harrington stepped out first. Tall, controlled, impeccable in black silk. No tears. Only irritation. Behind her came Malcolm Harrington, rigid and silent, and trailing them was Victor Harrington, the golden sun, the heir, the smirk. Evelyn stopped just under the porch light and stared at Arya as if examining a stain. "You've embarrassed this family enough," she said coldly. Arya's lips trembled. "Daniel just died." "And that tragedy," Evelyn replied smoothly, "does not give you ownership of what was never yours." The words cut deeper than the rain. Daniel Harrington had shielded Arya from them for 6 years. He had built an empire in tech logistics with her. Late nights, shared strategy, shared risk, shared success. But the Harrington name was old money. And Arya had been an outsider from the beginning. Victor stepped forward, hands in his coat pockets. "You signed a prenup, remember? Generous monthly support. That's all you're entitled to." Arya blinked. "Daniel rewrote it last year." Malcolm finally spoke. "There is no record of that." Her heart dropped. There had been a new agreement. Daniel had insisted. He told her, laughing, "You built this with me. They'll never control you." But now, "There must be a mistake," she whispered. Evelyn's gaze hardened. "The only mistake was my son marrying you." The guards dragged her remaining bags outside. The door closed. The locks changed. Just like that, the rain came harder. Arya stood there shaking, staring at the house she helped finance, renovate, and expand. The boutique hotels, the shipping lines, the international contracts. Gone. Victor leaned close enough for her to hear him over the storm. "You were a chapter," he said softly. "We're closing the book." The gates locked, and the Harrington family erased her. An hour later, she was walking down the highway. No car. No phone. Victor had ordered it cut off. No access to her accounts. Everything frozen. The rain blurred her vision. Her mind replayed the hospital call. Daniel's car had spun off the coastal bridge. Brake failure, they said. Instant death. But something about it felt wrong. He had just called her 30 minutes before. He sounded tense. "We need to talk tonight," he had said. About what? Headlights appeared behind her. Bright, fast. She didn't move. The car swerved at the last second, tires screaming. Darkness swallowed her. When she opened her eyes, she was staring at a ceiling she didn't recognize. White. Clean. Silent. Her body ached. A voice spoke from the corner of the room. "You were standing in the road, like someone who had already given up." She turned slowly. A man sat in a black chair, legs crossed, hands folded calmly. Cold gray suit. Sharp eyes. Still posture. He looked dangerous in the way a chess player looks dangerous. Measured. "Where am I?" she asked weakly. "In my residence." "Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly. "People call me Sila's Veil." The name hit her even in her fragile state. Sila's Veil. The unseen power broker behind half the city's import routes. A man rumored to control debts, contracts, politicians. Some called him the broker. Others called him worse. You almost died, he continued evenly. My driver prefers not to stain the pavement. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs. Why help me? She asked. Sila studied her quietly. Because you didn't flinch. She frowned. Most people jump away from headlights, he said. You stood still. Silence filled the room. He leaned forward slightly. What did they take from you? Her throat tightened. Everything. His eyes sharpened. Good. She stared at him, confused. Good, she whispered. Yes, he replied calmly. Because when people lose everything, they stop negotiating with fear. Her breathing steadied. He already knew. He knew about Daniel. About the Harringtons. About the estate. Information moved fast in his world. You're Arya Callaway, he continued. Co-founder of Harrington Global Logistics, architect of their Southeast trade expansion. Her eyes widened. They removed your digital access this morning, he added. Frozen accounts. Legal maneuver filed under spousal limitation clause. Her pulse raced. They forged something, she whispered. Probably, Sila said. Old families are predictable. He stood. Walked to the window. The question, he continued calmly, is whether you want compensation or reclamation. She stared at him. What's the difference? Compensation is money. He turned slowly. Reclamation is war. Silence pressed against her ribs. Arya thought of Evelyn's eyes. Victor's smirk. The gate's closing. I want them to feel what I felt tonight, she said quietly. Sila's nodded once. Then you'll need leverage. 3 days later, Arya walked through Sila's Vale's private study. No crutches. No tears. Just silence. He handed her a tablet. Victor Harrington has offshore gambling debt, he said calmly. 42 million. Her eyes widened. He hid it through shell corporations. Sloppy. She scrolled. There's more, Sila's continued. Malcolm rerouted company funds into a personal holding trust last quarter. Embezzlement, she breathed. Yes. And Evelyn, she asked. Sila's paused. Forgery. Her heart stopped. What kind? Property transfer documents, backdated. Arya's hands trembled. The rewritten prenup. It wasn't missing. It had been erased. Her husband hadn't betrayed her. They had. Sila's watched her carefully. This is where most people hesitate, he said, because justice is messy. She lifted her head slowly. They changed the locks while I was still wearing my wedding ring. Her voice no longer shook. Sila's gave a small approving nod. Good, he said softly. You're ready. Across the city, the Harrington mansion buzzed with controlled arrogance. Victor hosted investors 2 weeks after Daniel's funeral. Too soon. Too confident. Markets stabilize, Victor said smoothly over champagne. Transitions happen. Evelyn watched him proudly. Then a staff member rushed in, pale. Sir, there's an issue. Victor's smile faded slightly. What issue? Our Singapore shipment has been flagged. By who? Customs authorities. That's impossible. Sir, they're citing documentation irregularities. Malcolm stiffened. Victor's jaw tightened. At that exact moment, in a quiet office miles away, Arya watched the alert pop up on Sila's secure screen. First ripple, Sila said. Her heart beat slow. Controlled. It's just paperwork, she murmured. Yes, Sila's agreed, but paperwork suffocates empires. Victor's phone rang again. Then again. 2 more shipments halted. 3 investors pulling back. Liquidity tightening. Evelyn's composure cracked for the first time. This is coincidence, she said sharply. But Victor's eyes had changed. He felt it. Something was moving. Something deliberate. That night, Victor stormed into Sila's Vale's estate uninvited. He didn't know Arya was standing inside the main hall. He didn't expect her. Security didn't stop him. They let him walk into the trap. Victor pointed at Sila's. "Whatever you're doing." Then he saw her. His face drained. "You," he breathed. Arya stepped forward slowly. Dry, composed, unrecognizable from the woman in the rain. "You look tired," she said calmly. Victor recovered quickly. "You think this is funny? You're interfering with corporate operations." She tilted her head slightly. "Corporate operations?" she asked softly. "Or gambling cleanup?" His jaw clenched. Sila's casually tapped a tablet. The screen displayed Victor's offshore accounts. Outstanding debts. Interest timelines. Creditor names. Victor went pale. "You hacked me," he snapped. "No," Sila's replied calmly. "You exposed yourself." Arya stepped closer. "You said I was a chapter," she said quietly. "I'm rewriting the ending." Victor tried to speak, but the power had shifted, and he felt it. Deep. For the first time since Daniel's death, Arya felt something stronger than grief. Control. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a question whispered. If they could forge documents, if they could erase her rights, what else could they hide? And why had Daniel sounded afraid that night? The war had just begun.
Victor lunged forward. Security restrained him before he reached her. "Remove your hands," he snapped, struggling to regain control. "You don't understand what you're starting." Arya's eyes were calm now, too calm. "No," she said quietly, "you don't. If you're still watching, pause for 1 second and comment *power below, because what happens next changes everything." Victor left that night shaken. But he wasn't afraid yet. Not truly. He still believed he could fix it. That was his first mistake. The following week, the Harrington empire began to crack in places no one could see. 3 more shipments were flagged. 2 banks requested internal audits. 1 major investor suspended a credit line pending clarification. Malcolm stopped sleeping. Evelyn stopped hosting. Victor stopped smiling. But Arya didn't celebrate. She was watching, learning, waiting. One evening, Sila's placed a slim black file on the table in front of her. "I hesitated to show you this," he said evenly. Her heartbeat slowed. "Why?" "Because revenge is clean when it's about greed. It becomes complicated when it's about blood." Her fingers hovered over the file. She opened it. Inside were photographs. The coastal bridge. Daniel's car wreckage. Police reports. Mechanical analysis. Her chest tightened. "This was ruled brake failure," she whispered. Sila's nodded, "Yes. But he didn't blink. The brake line wasn't worn." Her pulse spiked. It was cut. Silence swallowed the room. The world tilted slightly. "No," she breathed, "that's impossible." "It was precise," Sila's continued calmly. "Not random damage, not corrosion, intentional." Her throat closed. "Who?" she whispered. "That," Sila said softly, "is the real question." Her hands shook violently now. Daniel's last call replayed in her mind. "We need to talk tonight." He had sounded urgent. Not scared. Determined. What was he investigating? She asked slowly. Sila's studied her. He accessed internal financial records 2 days before his death. Her stomach dropped. What records? Sila's slid another document across the table. A highlighted transaction. Company funds moved into a holding account. Authorized under Malcolm Harrington's credentials. But time-stamped during a window when Malcolm was overseas. Forgery. Massive. Daniel had discovered it. And then he died. Her breathing became uneven. No, she whispered, they would. Sila's didn't interrupt her. Wouldn't they? Evelyn's cold eyes. Victor's debts. Malcolm's silence. Everything aligned. They killed him, she said finally. Sila's did not soften it. Yes. The word detonated inside her. For a long time she didn't move. Then something inside her changed. Grief turned into something colder. Something sharper. They didn't just take my home, she said slowly. They took my husband. Sila's nodded once. Now, he said quietly, the war becomes personal. But the truth wasn't finished. 2 days later, another message arrived. Encrypted. Anonymous. Sila's decrypted it in front of her. The screen revealed a video file. Timestamped the night of Daniel's death. Parking garage footage. Daniel arguing with someone. The angle was partial, but the voice was clear. Victor. I won't let you bury this, Daniel said in the recording. You're naive, Victor replied sharply. This family survives by controlling the narrative. You're stealing from your own company. It's my company now. Arya's vision blurred. The argument escalated. Then the footage cut. Her heart pounded violently. He confronted him, she whispered. Yes. And hours later. Sila's finished the sentence. The brakes were cut. Arya stood up abruptly, packing. Rage pulsed through her veins. Victor hadn't just been reckless. He had been desperate. And desperate men make fatal decisions. We release this, she said instantly. Sila's shook his head. Not yet. She turned sharply. Why? Because once you accuse them of murder, the battlefield changes. They become animals. Her jaw tightened. They already are. Yes, Sila's agreed, but wounded animals attack blindly. He stepped closer. You don't expose murder at the beginning. Her breathing slowed as she listened. You dismantle their protection first. She understood. Power before exposure. Structure before strike. You're saying I wait, she said. I'm saying, Sila's replied evenly, you break them financially and socially first, then you remove the mask. Her hands slowly curled into fists. Daniel deserved justice. But justice required precision. Meanwhile, inside the Harrington mansion, tension turned ugly. Victor slammed documents across the table. 48 hours, he shouted. 48 hours and 3 partners froze accounts. Malcolm rubbed his temples. This is targeted. Evelyn's eyes were icy. Of course it is. Victor stopped packing. You think it's her. Evelyn's lips thinned. She doesn't have that kind of power. Victor didn't respond. But he remembered Sila's veil standing beside her. And that unsettled him. That night, Arya returned to the coastal bridge. Alone. Wind whipped her hair. Below, waves crashed against concrete. She stared at the exact stretch where Daniel's car had fallen. She closed her eyes. I'll finish what you started, she whispered. Tears didn't come this time. Only resolve. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She answered. A distorted voice spoke. They know you're digging. Her spine stiffened. Who is this? They're cleaning internal records. You have less time than you think. The line went dead. She stood frozen. Cleaning records. Destroying evidence. Sila's had been right. They were preparing. She called him immediately. They're erasing things, she said. Sila's was calm as always. Good, he replied. Her brows furrowed. Good. Yes, he said, because panic leaves fingerprints. The next morning, news broke quietly. Harrington Global Logistics announced temporary restructuring. Translation: they were bleeding. Stock dipped. Credit tightened. Victor scheduled a private meeting with Sila's Veil. He came alone. Desperate men always do. Sila's received him in a private lounge. Arya watched through a secure monitor. Victor's arrogance was gone. "What do you want?" he demanded. Silas sipped his tea. "Clarifies. You're choking my company." "No," Silas corrected smoothly. "Your decisions are." Victor leaned forward. "Name your price." Silas glanced briefly toward the hidden camera, toward Arya watching. Then he spoke. "Transfer controlling interest." Victor froze. "Are you insane?" Silas remained expressionless. "Or," he added quietly, "we release certain offshore records to your creditors." Victor's face went white. "You'd destroy us." Silas's eyes sharpened. "No," he said softly, "you destroyed yourselves." Victor stood abruptly. "This isn't over." Silas smiled faintly. "It's barely begun." Later that night, Arya sat alone in her room. The video replayed in her mind. Daniel arguing. Victor deflecting. Brakes cut. Family betrayal. She should have felt shattered. Instead, she felt sharpened. But then another thought crept in. Why had Daniel confronted Victor alone? Why hadn't he told her everything? Why had he said, "We need to talk tonight"? Something else was missing. Something incomplete. She pulled up Daniel's final call logs. One number stood out. Not Victor. Not Malcolm. Not Evelyn's. A private number. Repeated. 2 days before his death. She brought it to Sila's. He ran it quietly. Then paused. "That's unusual," he murmured. "What is it?" He turned the screen toward her. The number traced back to a secured political liaison office. Connected to city regulatory enforcement. Daniel had been speaking to regulators. Not just confronting Victor. He had been preparing to expose something larger. Arya's heart raced. "What was he building?" she whispered. Silas's expression shifted slightly. "That," he said slowly, "is bigger than internal theft." The pieces were rearranging. Daniel wasn't just uncovering family corruption. He was preparing to expose a system. A web. And if that was true, his death wasn't just about money. It was about silence. Arya leaned back slowly. The war she thought she was fighting was much larger than revenge. And someone else was watching. Midpoint twist. Daniel hadn't just discovered financial fraud. He had gathered evidence of a citywide logistics laundering ring. And the Harringtons weren't the only players. They were part of something bigger. Which meant, if she destroyed them publicly without caution, she could become the next accident. Silas studied her quietly. "You can walk away," he said calmly. "Take what's yours, leave the rest." She looked at him. At the city lights beyond the glass. At the empire that had buried her husband. "They threw me into the rain," she said softly. Her eyes hardened. "Now I burn the storm." The first arrest happened at sunrise. Federal agents stormed a Harrington warehouse on the East Docks. Forklifts froze mid-motion, workers scattered, cameras flashed. By 9 a.m., financial news outlets were whispering words the Harrington family had never been associated with before. Investigation. Irregularities. Potential criminal liability. And Arya Callaway watched it all in silence. If you're still here, hit that like button right now, because this is where empires start to fall. Victor didn't panic at first. He went into control mode. Lawyers assembled. Statements drafted. Blame redirected. It's a compliance misunderstanding, he told reporters. We're cooperating fully. But behind closed doors, his voice cracked. Malcolm sat rigid at the head of the table. Evelyn's composure had thinned into something brittle. This is coordinated, Victor hissed. Customs, regulators, banks, this is not coincidence. Evelyn's gaze was sharp. Then find the source. Victor didn't say her name, but they were all thinking it. Across the city, in Sila's Vale's private operations room, Arya stood before a digital map of Harrington Global's trade routes. Red indicators blinked. Frozen accounts. Flagged shipments. Suspended contracts. Sila's folded his hands behind his back. They're isolating, he observed calmly. Good, isolated structures collapse faster. Arya didn't smile. They deserve worse. Sila's turned to her. Emotion accelerates mistakes, he said quietly. Precision wins wars. She nodded once. I know. But the anger was no longer raw. It was engineered. The second blow landed 2 days later. A major international bank issued a formal statement suspending Harrington Global's credit lines, pending investigation into suspicious transfers. Stock plummeted 18% in 6 hours. Victor stared at the numbers in disbelief. That's impossible, he muttered. His CFO swallowed hard. Sir, creditors are requesting immediate collateral. Malcolm's hand trembled for the first time. We can't cover that, he whispered. Victor slammed his fist against the desk. This is her. Evelyn stood slowly. Then remove her. Silence fell. They had already removed her once. But this time, they meant permanently. That night Arya felt it. The shift. Sila's security perimeter tightened. Additional vehicles positioned. Encrypted communications rerouted. You're anticipating retaliation, she said. Sila's didn't deny it. They've realized this isn't random. And men like Victor don't negotiate when cornered. Her eyes darkened. Let him try. Sila's stepped closer. This isn't bravado, he said evenly. When legacy families feel extinction, they abandon morality. She met his gaze without blinking. They abandoned morality when they cut Daniel's brakes. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Respect. Not romance. Recognition. She wasn't the woman in the rain anymore. The third strike wasn't financial. It was social. Arya appeared publicly for the first time since the funeral. She attended a private charity summit, one historically funded by the Harrington Foundation. The room went silent when she entered. Victor froze mid-conversation. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her wine glass. Arya wore black. Not mourning black. Power black. She didn't approach them immediately. She spoke first to the city's elite investors. Quietly, confidently, and she handed out copies. Internal audit summaries. Documented inconsistencies. Nothing explosive yet. Just enough. Enough for doubt. Enough for whispers. Victor felt it. Like termites inside the foundation. He crossed the room. You're playing a dangerous game, he muttered under his breath. Arya didn't look at him. You taught me the rules, she replied calmly. You think you can survive what's coming. She finally turned. I already survived the worst night of my life. His jaw clenched. You don't know everything. Her eyes sharpened. No, she said softly, but I will. 2 days later, the anonymous voice called again. They're planning to move assets offshore, emergency liquidation. Arya relayed it to Sila's immediately. He smiled faintly. Desperation confirmed. Within hours, regulatory authorities received formal evidence packages, meticulously organized, time-stamped, legally airtight. The Harrington accounts were frozen before they could transfer. Victor smashed his phone against the wall. Malcolm collapsed into a chair. Evelyn stared at the television as analysts dissected their company live. "They're circling us like vultures," Victor muttered. "No," Evelyn said coldly. "She is." But Arya wasn't done. Not even close. Sila's brought her into a secured conference room that night. On the screen was a web diagram. Harrington Global connected to shell companies. Shell companies connected to city officials. Bribes disguised as consulting fees. Daniel hadn't just uncovered family fraud. He had uncovered a laundering ring. And one powerful name blinked at the top of the chart. Councilman Richard Hail. A man untouchable for 20 years. Sila studied her expression. This is the real spine of the system. Arya's pulse slowed. If we expose this, they all fall, Sila's finished. And if we do, they regroup. The weight of it pressed against her chest. Daniel had died trying to expose this. Now she stood where he once stood. Same choice. Same danger. Sila's voice was steady. You can end it at the Harringtons, take your assets, walk away wealthy. Her eyes didn't leave the screen. And let Daniel's death become a footnote. Sila's didn't respond. She turned toward him slowly. We finish what he started. For the first time, Sila's hesitated. You understand the cost. She nodded. Yes. That was the moment she made a move that even Sila's hadn't predicted. She scheduled a press conference. Public. Televised. Not anonymous leaks. Not whispers. Direct confrontation. Sila's found out an hour later. You're accelerating, he said calmly, but his eyes sharpened. They're preparing to erase everything, she replied. I won't let them control the timing. He stepped closer. This exposes you too. I know. And if Hail retaliates. She held his gaze. Then let him. Silence stretched between them. Then Sila's gave a small nod. Very well. If she was going to burn the storm, he would stand beside it. The day of the conference arrived. News vans lined the plaza. Cameras rolled. Victor watched from his office in disbelief. She wouldn't, he muttered. Evelyn's face was pale. She will. Arya stepped to the podium. Microphones crowded her. She didn't tremble. My name is Arya Callaway, she began clearly, and my husband died 2 weeks after uncovering financial fraud inside Harrington Global Logistics. The room shifted. Cameras zoomed in. I have reason to believe his death was not accidental. Gasps rippled. Victor's world tilted. But this is bigger than my husband, she continued. This is about a network that launders funds through logistics channels across this city. She didn't release everything. Not yet. But she planted the bomb. And she said one name. Councilman Richard Hail. Across town, Hale's phone began ringing non-stop. Sila's watched from a distance. She had crossed the line. There was no retreat now. That night, something unexpected happened. Arya received a secure message. From an unknown encrypted source. Attached was a final video file. Timestamped 1 hour before Daniel's death. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Daniel was alone in his office. Speaking directly into the camera. If you're seeing this, he said calmly, it means they moved faster than I expected. Her breath stopped. I trusted the wrong person, he continued. Arya leaned closer. I thought exposing Victor would be enough, but this reaches higher. If anything happens to me, don't go to the authorities first. Her heart pounded violently. Go to Sila's veil. She froze. He's the only one powerful enough to counterbalance them. Her mind reeled. Daniel knew. He knew Sila's. He had planned this. He had anticipated his own death. And he had positioned her. Here. The video ended. Arya lowered the screen slowly. Everything shifted again. This wasn't coincidence. Sila's hadn't randomly found her that night. Daniel had prepared a failsafe. Sila's had been watching longer than she realized. She walked into Sila's study without knocking. "You knew," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Daniel approached me 3 months ago," he said evenly. "He was building a case." Her chest tightened. "You let him confront them alone." "I advised caution," Sila's replied calmly. "He chose confrontation." Anger flickered in her eyes. "You were waiting." "Yes." The honesty stunned her. "I don't move without certainty," he said. "After his death I observed. When they threw you out I intervened." Silence pressed between them. "So I was part of a strategy," she whispered. "No," he said quietly. "You were the strategy." Her emotions collided. Grief, anger, clarity. Daniel had trusted Sila's. Daniel had known this path might lead here. And now she stood at the center of something far larger than revenge. Sila's met her gaze steadily. "You can still walk away." She shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice was steel now. "They killed my husband. They corrupted this city. And they thought I would drown in the rain." She stepped closer. "Now they drowned." Sila's watched her carefully. Not as a savior. Not as a mentor. But as an equal stepping fully into power. Outside, the city buzzed with scandal. Harrington's stock crashed another 22%. Councilman Hail denied everything publicly. But investigations were expanding. And Victor finally understood something terrifying. This wasn't sabotage. This was annihilation. The arrest warrant was signed at midnight. By dawn, the Harrington estate was surrounded. Black vehicles, flashing lights, cameras waiting like predators. Victor Harrington woke to fists pounding against the front doors. Malcolm didn't resist. Evelyn stood at the top of the staircase, perfectly still, as federal agents flooded the marble floors she once ruled. "Victor Harrington," an agent announced, "you are under arrest for financial fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." Victor turned pale. "This is political," he shouted. But no one was listening anymore. Across the city, Arya watched the live coverage in silence. No smile. No celebration. Just a long exhale. If you've stayed with this story until now, comment "justice" below, because what happens next is the kind of ending you never forget. By noon, Councilman Richard Hail was taken in for questioning. By evening, leaked internal messages tied his office directly to the laundering network Daniel had uncovered. The system was collapsing. One pillar at a time. But the final blow wasn't legal. It was personal. Victor requested a private meeting. Not with prosecutors. Not with his lawyers. With Arya. Sila's advised against it. "He has nothing left but words," Sila said evenly. "Desperate men use words like knives." "I'm not afraid of him anymore," Arya replied. And she was. They met in a secured conference room under federal supervision. Victor looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. The arrogance was gone. The smirk erased. "You did this," he said quietly. "No," Arya replied calmly. "You did." He leaned forward. "You think you won. You think exposing hell fixes anything. It fixes what Daniel started." Victor's jaw tightened. "You still don't know everything." Her eyes sharpened. "Then say it." Silence stretched. And then he laughed. A dry, broken sound. You really believed Daniel was clean in all this? The words hit like ice. What are you saying? Victor leaned back slowly. Daniel discovered the laundering, yes, but he also benefited from it before he understood the scale. Her pulse spiked. That's a lie. It's documented, Victor replied. Performance bonuses tied to manipulated logistics margins. He signed off on shipments that were questionable. Her chest tightened painfully. He didn't know, she whispered. He suspected, Victor corrected, but he didn't pull out immediately, he calculated. The room felt smaller. Her mind raced. Daniel's late nights. His tension. His urgency. He planned to expose everything, Victor continued, but he also planned to shield himself first. Arya stood abruptly. You're twisting this. Am I? Victor said quietly. Ask Vale, he knows. Her breath faltered. She turned and walked out without another word. Sila's was waiting. She didn't sit. Tell me the truth, she demanded. He held her gaze steadily. Daniel approved 2 shipments tied to the laundering ring before he uncovered its depth. Her heart pounded violently. You said he was clean. I said he uncovered it. That's not the same. Sila's didn't flinch. He was ambitious, he said calmly. He thought he could control the exposure, restructure internally, protect the company. And himself, she whispered. Yes. The word shattered something inside her. Daniel wasn't corrupt. But he wasn't innocent either. He had played with the fire before trying to extinguish it. Tears burned her eyes for the first time since the rain. He should have told me. He was protecting you, Sila's replied. She laughed bitterly. That's what powerful men always say. Silence filled the room. The final emotional twist was Victor's arrest. It was Hale's collapse. It was this. The man she was avenging had been flawed. Human. Complicit before courageous. And she had built her rage on a pedestal. Days later, Victor accepted a plea deal. Malcolm followed. Evelyn refused. She chose trial. Arya attended. Not for revenge. For closure. During testimony, financial records surfaced showing Daniel's early approvals. The courtroom murmured. Arya didn't look away. She didn't defend him blindly. She didn't collapse either. When called to speak, she stood calmly. My husband made mistakes, she said clearly, but when he understood the truth, he tried to fix it. Her voice didn't shake. He died trying to correct what others built. Evelyn's mask finally cracked. You destroyed my family, she hissed under her breath. Arya met her eyes. No, she replied softly, your choices did. Evelyn was convicted. The Harrington estate was seized. Liquidated. Transferred under court order. Weeks passed. The city stabilized. The laundering network dismantled. Hale resigned in disgrace. Victor disappeared into a reduced sentence. Malcolm faded quietly. Evelyn lost everything she once valued. But Arya didn't take the mansion back. She surprised everyone. Instead of reclaiming it as a trophy, she turned it into something else. A public legal and financial transparency institute. Named after Daniel. Not to glorify him, but to remind the city that silence enables corruption. Silas watched the transformation quietly. You didn't keep it, he observed. It was never mine, she replied, not the way it stood. He nodded. And now, she faced him. For the first time I choose without anger. Silas studied her carefully. I once offered you war, he said. You gave me leverage, she corrected. And now, she stepped closer. Now I want partnership. Not ownership. Not dependency. Equal ground. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, for the first time since the rain, he smiled fully. 6 months later, the city had a new balance of power. Not ruled by old money, not controlled by hidden laundering rings, but monitored by structures built from exposure. Arya Callaway stood at the balcony of the former Harrington estate, now a public institution, as reporters below asked one final question. "Do you regret starting this war?" She thought about the rain, the gates slamming shut, Daniel's final video, the truth, the flaws, the cost. "No," she said simply. "They threw me into a storm." She paused, and I learned how to control it. Beside her, Sila's veil stood not as a shadow broker, but as a man who had chosen to stand publicly beside her. Not above, not behind, equaled. Victor once called her a chapter. Evelyn once called her a mistake. The city once saw her as a widow. Now they saw something else. A woman who lost everything, discovered the truth, faced it fully, and built something cleaner from the ashes. That was the real poetic justice. Not revenge, not ruin, reconstruction. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful transformation begins with a slammed gate, a broken brake line, and a woman who refuses to drown in the rain.